Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It is Friday, March 12th, 1:34 p.m. This is Senate Education. A few updates first for committee members and for others. I was in appropriations at 1, and I know Senator Chittenden was in at 1:15 with miscellaneous ed. Senator Hooker is going, I believe, at 3 with S16. A couple of takeaways from my time. We were appropriated the $3 million for literacy in the expedited bill. So that's a good start for us, I think, in terms of an important start in terms of addressing these issues. And certainly approach seems to clearly be in agreement. We also, Senator Perchlik reported back to me, we did receive the $4 million in for the after school grants. That is also in the expedited budget. So that will, as we heard yesterday, help families prepare and programs prepare for the summer. And so that will, a couple of other things, the Senate appropriations will be amending our literacy bill because the appropriation for the, which is typical, which is standard, the appropriation for the position in AOE would be a general fund supported position. So they will remove that and they will put that on their list for consideration when they do the big bill. And I think that may happen, of course, with other bills, of course, as you see as the session goes on. Senator Chittenden, do you have any update on miscellaneous education?
Yes, they took a vote while I was there and they approved moving it forward unanimously. So Senate Ed miscellaneous will move forward to the floor. They also raised something regarding the literacy bill. Would that be good to bring up now?
Yes, please.
So during the discussion on Senate Ed miscellaneous, Senator Kitchell doubled back to the earlier conversation, and I said I would bring this to the committee. And she just wanted to have us consider this in the composition of the literacy committee, the standing committee. I think that's the right term. She just thought that the state librarian, who has a useful role in offering perspectives on literacy. So she didn't strongly endorse or say that she's not going to support it without this the case, but she wanted us to consider adding the state librarian to the composition of the literacy committee.
Thank you for that. Any questions for Senator Chittenden? Jeannie, if you would put that on Tuesday's agenda, and just for us to have a conversation about that. So what I think we'll do is we will, Senator Perchlik,
I just wondered how we would do that since we passed the bill. Would it be like a floor amendment or something?
Be a floor amendment. I can loop back with Senator Kitchell to see if she, how serious she is, what her interest is. If she wants to propose it, we can also just have some discussion about it on Tuesday. I don't think Jeannie is there, so let me just get a piece of paper and.
I'm here.
Oh, you are. Jeannie, would you put that on our agenda for Tuesday?
It's done.
Oh, great. Thank you very much. Okay, anything else? The other thing, of course, this is going to now warrant, since we do have the $4 million for after school, is some language that I know Mr. Desmarais has. And depending on timing, we'll start to look at that language. And see if we can come to some agreement. If we can't, then we can still kind of work a little bit. I'll be in touch with people this weekend to see if we can get somewhere. So we might have to rendezvous quickly on Tuesday morning, just to, depending on Senator Kitchell's timing, to vote the expedited budget. So that we, again, this is for the after school grant program. If it looks like they may need some language for how to distribute those funds. Still kind of figuring that out. So just keep that in the back of your minds. It doesn't even necessarily probably need a committee vote, but some language. The other thing, as it relates to appropriations, I'm meeting tomorrow with Senators Westman and Baruth to go over, again, our request for higher education, CCV. These will be conversations that will continue after crossover. I know there are other priorities that we've heard from VSAC, but this goes back to our suggestion of a $3 million appropriation that would allow for students to take classes at our state colleges and CCV during the summer, kind of a continuation / expansion of the McClure Foundation work that was done, and I think by all accounts was successful. Any questions on any of that? Seeing none, we today will be we'll return to our strike all S13. We'll start with that. We'll go through it again with Mr. Desmarais, see if there are any questions. Hoping to send that to approps today, as well as S100. We are continuing our testimony on S100, and I just want to make something clear. Hopefully everyone's comfortable with this. I do plan to vote S100 out, as we've discussed, recognizing that I've also put it on the agenda for Tuesday. S100 has still a ways to go through both approps and finance, but I thought we would continue our discussions on Tuesday to see if we want to, in any way, amend it going forward. But I do want to be respectful of the committee and not let it die in Senate education. Does that make sense to everyone? Senator Hooker, okay, I'm just not sure if you had a question there. And then we'll also vote out the school discipline amendment to S16. Other final things before we really get started, trying to keep next week light in some regards. I mean, we'll continue our work on H81. We have some other things that I've just discussed, but it being that week when the floor could get long and that could seriously impact afternoon committees 3 days a week. So I'm hesitant to schedule up a lot of people that might then need to be rescheduled. So if anybody has anything pressing, there are a few things that I have put on there. Back to Senator Hooker's and Terenzini's good request of an update from the Chancellor is on our calendar for next week. I mentioned H81, S100 reviewing to see if we want to have an amendment after we hear from testimony today and further discussion. And I think that is it. Any questions? Senator Terenzini.
Thank you, Senator Campion. Did Senator Hooker and I had some questions for the Chancellor that I believe you would forwarded off for us. Did you ever get a response back on our behalf?
I do not believe so. I was told that they would come from Catherine Lavesser to all of us. And seeing both of you shake your head, I will loop back to make sure that you all get those. Jeannie, you haven't seen those, have you?
I'm sorry, what are you asking?
Would you loop back, if you would be so kind, as to reach out to Catherine Lavesser? She is with the state colleges. And would you see, we're expecting answers to the Rutland County delegation's questions. And if you would mind asking her for those and then forwarding them along to everyone.
Okay, will do.
Terrific, thanks a lot. Okay. Seeing no other questions, let's, Mr. Desmarais, if you would be so kind as to bring us back for another walkthrough of the strike all for S13.
Sure. Again, do you want me to bring that up on screen or not?
I am looking to senators. I don't see anyone who needs it. I have it.
Okay, all right.
Okay, yep.
Okay, so S13, there are only a few changes. Do you want me to walk through changes or the entire bill?
I think I'm looking to the committee. I see no preference. Why don't you take us through the entire bill? It's not very long. I think it warrants maybe just highlighting the changes, but a little bit as you walk through it, review for us where we're at.
Okay. So for the record, Jim Damray, Ledge Council, we're walking through draft 3.1 of your amendment to S13. To strike all. Section 1 are the findings. There are 3 findings. I won't read them, but they basically leverage off of the work done under Act 173, and knowing that more work needs to be done here. And the findings of the people weighting factors report, and talking about the fact that we need more time in order to implement that report. Section 2 is a task force that's being created, and it is to recommend to you an action plan and proposed legislation to ensure that all public school students have equitable access to educational opportunities, taking into account the people weighting factor report. Membership is 6 members. We have 4 members of the General Assembly, 1 from Senate Finance, 1 from Senate Education, 1 from House Ways and Means, and 1 from House Education, appointed by the chairs of those committees. And then you have the Secretary of Education and the chair of the State Board. And powers and duties, you have the general power and duty that I've talked about already, and then specifically looking to recommend the weighting factors to modify or create and their associated weights, looking to see whether categorical age should be used instead of some or all of the weighting factors. Looking to recommend how to ensure that school districts are using funding to meet education quality standards, improve student outcomes. They need to consider education property tax rates and tax capacity of school districts and the recommendations of the Vermont Tax Structure Commission report. They need to recommend how to transition to the new weights for categorical aid to promote equity. They need to recommend how tuition rates for tuition towns and career technical centers should be adjusted to reflect actual cost of educating students, and to consider school funding formulas in other states, to consider the relationship between the weights or categorical aid to Act 173 and to Act 60 and to Act 46. You have in subsection D, the consultant provision. I changed it from a may to a shall, and that the consultant would have to have expertise and experience in providing advice on Vermont's education funding and tax system, and be nationally recognized in the field. Collaborations with the V's, subsection E. The report is due to you on or before July 15, 2022. The task force meets not more than 12 times. I'm on page 6, by the way. Assistance, I've blown out a bit further because although not probably an issue for you, for people assisting this council, I want to be very clear on roles and responsibilities because it's going to be a lot of work over the summer for people. So I have the administrative assistance coming from the Agency of Education, which would include organizing meetings, taking minutes, technical assistance from JFO, which would include data analysis and computation, assistance from the consultant, which would include assistance in executing the task force's powers and duties and writing the report required, and assistance from Ledge Council, which would include legal advice in drafting the proposed legislation. Then we've got section 3 on the bottom of page 6 is recognizing that the intent of the General Assembly is to implement the people weighting factor report, and it gives you some sense for timeframes around that. And then section 4 is the appropriation of $10,800 for per diem and reimbursement. And upon recommendation of Catherine Benham from JFO, $150,000 appropriation for the consultant costs. And it's effective on passage.
Questions? Senator Perslick?
Thank you. In section E, which is on page 5, line 9, that's where we talk about that they'll reach out to those, regular cast of characters, which I think is good. But I thought at one point we even said that, or maybe we talked about, or somebody said they envisioned some public meetings, and I wanted to know if we thought, or is it in here somewhere else?
No, that was in S13 and Senator Baruch's underlying bill that you're amending, and that had a provision with the state board to conduct 6 meetings across the state, either virtually or in person, in order to both inform communities about what this is and to get their input, and then to feed that back into the recommendations that the task force is providing. That is not in your bill.
Okay, well, I guess I'm thinking out loud about the benefit of specifically saying some. I don't know if we need to do 6 or some, at least a public meeting for sure. And I don't know, with COVID, it doesn't matter if you do it where you do it, if it's Zoom meeting, but I see a value in, ideally we would do like meetings in the South, meetings in the Northeast.
Yeah.
So you can get some input directly from the local school board members, or, from those towns most impacted. Even though they're represented by the School Boards Association, it's good to hear from the actual school board members, I think.
Senator Lyons?
So I think that's a great idea. And different ways of doing it. You suggested, meeting across the state. I don't know how many of these meetings are going to be in person or Zoom. Who knows?
Mm.
But at least maybe there's notice given to the public about the meetings if they are Zoom, audiovisual. Or the other thing I thought about was, as you were talking, because now I'm thinking out loud, is maybe as the draft report, as there is a draft report, maybe have some public meetings around the state just to get comment. It's going to be tough because there's going to be a lot of detail. So you'd have to present the report to folks around the state and then get questions. And that's really the way the input would be done. So it might be helpful after some decisions have been made, just to float it out there so people know what's there. So they're different. So I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's interesting. Senator Perslick's idea reminds me a lot of the Act 250 Commission. We went on the road a little bit. We got some feedback. It seems to me that we would want to have some of these conversations in the summer. COVID, even with COVID, possibly, have some kinds of conversation, and even through the fall a little bit. We could do it a couple of different ways. We could, one of the things with the Act 250 Commission, there always was time for public comment in the beginning of every meeting, so there is that way to do it. I'm not sure if that's the best way, actually. We could simply, we could probably come up with language that would say, similar to what we're doing with the usual suspects, make certain that you've taken testimony from the general public without giving a lot of specificity. Or we could we could specify and, put in some dollar amounts, again, for hosting. And I think the way Senator Perslick mentioned it, something in the South, something in Montpelier, something up north, to give those interested in weighing in on this an opportunity to do so. Mr. Desmarais.
So I just posted in the chat the underlying S13 bill. And in that bill, on page 3, subsection B has this provision which essentially says that the State Board of Education shall hold virtually or in person not less than 6 public meetings in different regions of the state, both to help educate the public about the financial realities of the winning formula and any changes to it, and to gather public input on the report and its proposed implementation. And then the State Board shall refer this testimony to, in his bill, be the Agency of Education, and yours would be to the Council, which shall use the input to inform the implementation plan. This was leveraging off the work that the State Board did for Act 46. They held meetings like this. And this also reflects the role the State Board believes it should have in terms of its main role going forward being public outreach.
So just to clarify, we would be asking the State Board to do some work, and then they would inform this group of people on what they found out through their public hearings?
Correct. They were informed under Bruce bill. It was the Agency of Education, because they were going to do the implementation work. In your bill, it would be the Council.
Oh, so it wouldn't be the agency, it wouldn't be the State Board, it would be the Council that would do it.
No, so I'm sorry, I'm confusing
No,
you.
that's okay.
It's the State Board who would do it,
Yeah,
but they would be informing the Council
correct.
to help inform the Council's plan. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Senator Perslick.
Yeah, that's the way it's written in the Bruce bill, but I don't think we should do that. Well, we could do it. I guess I'm not opposed to it, but since we're creating a different committee than was in that bill, it's different. So I think we just have the committee do it, of which the board is a member, instead of having the board go off and do it and come back to the group. Because then I don't know, it just seems like a strange thing to do it. If we're creating this group to look into it, you'd want to make sure they're there at the public meetings. So, I mean, I think I'm kind of where you were just a little bit, Senator Campion, where we could do it either way. We could say you should have at least one public meeting, and you should make sure that you hear from those communities, local school board, school districts that are most impacted, and then leave it from there, or get very specific like the original S13. I'm okay with leaving it more broad, but at least giving them direction that they need to have at least one public meeting, and they need to hear from local school boards in public in the most affected communities. But whether that be how they're affected differently, but some are definitely affected more than others.
Right. So, and yeah, I like that idea. I mean, but if you have a public hearing, it sounds like it would be a public hearing with people commenting. And so I'm so ambivalent about this, because if the task force has information that you have a consultant, you're building information, you're drawing conclusions, you're getting ready to act, more or less. So you've made decisions, or you're in the process of making decisions. Question one is, will that public input help formulate those decisions? Or B, is it better to build something, or a set of recommendations, and then get input just on those recommendations? Because if you go out and you ask for input on the previous report, you're just going to get the people who, the same people we're getting right now.
Yeah, you could do both. You could hear from them, if that's okay, Senator Campion.
Oh, please, yes, please.
You could do an open meeting just to make sure people have a chance to be heard, but then you could also have an opportunity for people to specifically respond to a draft. And I'd like adding some kind of language, say like in that E where we list the organizations, also list hearing from, those communities most affected, so that we hear from, the range of those communities on both sides, if you want to think of it as two-sided.
And by
Right, that, I'm sorry, Senator
no,
Campion,
please
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I was just going to say that the decision about which communities is going to be very much up to the group itself, and they'll know. I mean, they'll have the list of who's positively or negatively affected. So.
And I'm not sure how I like just talking about the ones that are most impacted personally. It kind of is, I know it's not your intention in any way, but so what does that mean? We'd have to, so those most impacted by the taxes piece, or more impacted by the change in what the, opportunities might. So I would rather personally just kind of keep it broad and have them talk with school districts. And I do think having a opportunity for a public meeting is a good one. I think there will be opportunity later on, once the report is out and an implementation plan is put forward, to testify in committees, and perhaps to have another opportunity to test, to weigh in a public way. But I'm not sure, but I may be missing something here, that we need to put that in legislation. I'm thinking just what we do need, I feel is a good point, is we have this conversation this summer with people and give people an opportunity through a public hearing. And, if you look at the public hearings historically in the state, we all know the ones that are going to, you were going to get a turnout, but Act 250, every public hearing, maybe, I'm thinking 20 people. Issue related to firearm regulations, very different. So I'm thinking we're probably talking about a public hearing that may pull in 30 people from throughout the state. And given the technology, I could see people doing one in Montpelier, letting people go up, or having virtual, or having a hybrid, or having, like Senator Perchel initially mentioned, having 3. But I think Senator Lyons' point about the uncertainty also of the summer, whether, where people are with vaccinations, but also people's just general comfort level, I'm more inclined to think these would be virtual. So, Senator Hooker.
So I'm confused as to who's going to be doing these public hearings. You're talking about doing it over the summer. Doesn't the bill stipulate that the implementation task force starts meeting in August?
It does, yeah.
So who's going to be doing these over the summer? I know that last biennium, economic development went out and did public hearings on housing.
Yeah.
Is it going to be the committee, the ed committee, that goes out and gathers these comments, or is it going to be?
It's a good question, and I perhaps misspoke. I was just thinking summer, but I mean, it could be fall. It could be once this is actually put in place, and probably I'd say summer isn't ideal, given that people will still be transitioning, back into a more normal life, sort of post-COVID. So once this would go into effect, then it would be an opportunity for this group, this committee that we're forming, to go out and hold, what I think we're kind of leaning toward, 1 to 3 public hearings.
So that'd be added on to the number of times that they're meeting.
Correct. Senator Perchel?
Well, I think it could be part of their, because we're giving 12 meetings, and if we're starting in August, I had forgotten about that. And they're writing a report in January. They didn't give them a lot of opportunities to do 12 meetings. I guess maybe they're going to be meeting more regularly than I envisioned, and that's fine. But I think a public meeting doesn't have to be separate from one of those 12, but that's okay if it is. And I hear you, Senator Campion, on not trying to say most effective. I agree with you on that comment. But what I guess I was trying to avoid by doing that is, we've all been to the public hearings where everybody just gets like 2 minutes or something like that. And if I was a school board member that really kind of wanted to try to explain, the importance of my school budget, and I was given 2 minutes, amongst a bunch of other people, I just wouldn't feel, it's hard to feel heard at those. Maybe they should just work with their school board association to have those opinions met, but that was kind of my thinking, is trying to avoid just having them be one of 30 people that had 2 minutes each.
Yeah, I think your point's a good one. And I think your other point is interesting and good, that maybe what ends up happening, if the school board association is doing their due diligence, they may hold a public hearing. I mean, they could hold some kind of something, and they are there at the table, and they could bring that information to the group. And that doesn't preclude us, again, I do like the idea of the group having a public hearing, but leave the work to the school board association. I don't even think we have to clarify it. We know Ms. Siglowski, she's going to do the work necessary to bring, the voices forward on this. That's my thought.
So that was the reason that I suggested having an informational meeting rather than a public hearing. Public hearings do get quite complex.
Yeah.
But yes, so maybe we ask, how do we ask the members of the group to inform the public? I mean, you suggested, is it, a good idea? Maybe the school boards would go out and give a report on what the draft final recommendation looks like. How do we direct individual members of the group as a whole to develop the information, but then the individual members and to present to their constituents?
It's a good
Or is
question.
that just their process that they have to sort out?
I'm inclined to think that's their process personally, like any advocate or lobbyist or representative, you're going to do your due diligence and inform your clients, your members. And I don't think we want to get in, I don't think we need to get in to specify that. I'm inclined to go to to keeping what we have and adding a public hearing. I'm happy with more, but I think one would probably do it, thinking about the number of people that would show up, also recognizing, and I don't think we have to direct them. Look at what Ms. Siglowski, and I don't want to attach names to this necessarily, but they have done a good job already of working with and getting the perspective that they are hearing in the field. And I have no reason to think that they wouldn't continue to do that work and being at the table in these discussions. Senator Hooker?
And then I think Senator Lyons talked about, once the plan has been formulated, then having, as you said, Senator Lyons, maybe an informational meeting sort of at the end of the process rather than at the beginning. I was thinking that the public hearings would be before the plan was developed. And that sounded to me as if we were kind of starting all over. But I think to have it after the plan has been developed, after the school board association has gathered data from their members, brought it to the table, brought it to the task force table, and then putting it out in a plan that then is presented to the public. And I'm not sure what kind of comments or
maybe it's just as it's informational. I mean, it's out there. It's a way. I think what Senator Lyons is getting at is, as I think about this, is we're trying to help just make sure everybody knows this is a big deal. Give people an opportunity. It's a way. I'm sure Health and Welfare does this in certain things also. Communicate this to groups, whatever it might be.
I would, it's an educational process so
Right.
that once the bill gets to us, we may hear fewer people by email. They might understand
Good point.
what the direction is, and this is the implementation plan. This is what's going to
Yep.
happen. Then they narrow their comments down to fewer things, maybe.
So, in summary, tell me how everyone's feeling about this. Things would stay as they are, but we would add language where there would be a public hearing also making certain, to Senator Perchik's good point, that, well, we'd add the one public hearing and then a report at the end, which would be there to share broadly. Not sure about the language on that. And then the question, how we would word it, but Mr. Demaray can wordsmith it. And then I'm thinking back to Senator Perchlik's, would you want other language around reaching out to other people? In other words, we're talking about the Vermont School Boards Association, the NEA, all of our usual folks are going to be at the table. We'd have one public hearing that would allow for greater conversation within those 12 meetings. Are you looking for anything? And then the report that Senator Lyons is going to force me to put in there. And is there anything else that you're thinking around language?
I think we could say one or more and leave it up to them, not so we're not specifically saying it has to be one, because maybe they kind of, like somebody suggested, that they do it at the beginning of each meeting, give a time to hear from different folks from the public.
Yeah.
In addition to those cast of characters, I think that's sufficient, and I trust that the group will understand the importance of reaching out to these local school districts.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we have to be too prescriptive.
And I was only kidding, Senator Lyons. I think you're absolutely right. How can we continue to be thinking about our work to, especially with something like this, let people know when the work is done, communicate that. And I'm not sure, Mr. Demaray, you probably have questions now that we're getting closer to finalizing some language.
Well, I do. It sounds like you want one or more public hearings. I get that.
Yeah.
It sounds though you want as well, though, an informational meeting. And I assume that would be once the draft report is done or draft recommendations are done, to share that with an informational meeting with the public. Is that what you mean?
What do Senator Perchlik?
Well, it seems to me that you would like what I heard Senator Lyons saying is like an informational meeting before, maybe, but maybe not. So I would just think the public hearing, any public hearing would be an informational hearing. I guess sometimes you just open it up and only hear comments. It's like, okay, here's our draft, just give us comments because you want to get through a lot of people. But I also assumed that they
can we call them public meetings and not hearings?
Yeah.
The implication of hearing is what you said before, that gets pretty,
I guess I'm saying I don't see the need to specifically call out a informational meeting, but I'm open to that. But I think I just thought, open to have one or more public meetings to take input from local school districts.
Share information and take input.
I love that. Yeah, it would be this reciprocal relationship. We're sharing the information and we're taking an input, Jim, how does that feel to you?
Yeah, that's fine. I'm gonna also add that that those public meetings might be in conjunction with their normal meetings. Right.
Yeah.
So right.
Yes.
So
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is what I think they did in Act 46, if I remember.
Did they? Yeah, I don't remember.
At least I just remember the seeing videos of the board members talking, but I can't remember if those were combined with the times where people were, because they did go around the state. I know that, but I think they did do some of their deliberations at those meetings too.
Great. How do committee members feel? So since Mr. Demaray is our star witness for the day and we're trying to vote things out, giving Mr. Demaray, taking a 15-minute pause, if that works for Jim, allow him to come back so we can stay on this and not move to anything else until we've kind of worked through this. Otherwise, I think we're sending him off with, we may have edits to other things. So I think we kind of take a 15, does that work for you?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Okay, so let's take a 15-minute break, come back at 2:30, and we will take a look at a clean copy of this. Thank you.